Hey everybody, it's Bus. The spoiler season for Dreamlit Paths is wrapping up. The new cards will be here in a matter of hours. I wanted to present you with 5 decks to try as the new standard set hits. Very exciting time. Not only is the new set coming out, but the rotation is hitting as well to really ramp up the newness of the standard format. Maybe there won't be as much Elder Dragon and Morgana running around in the upcoming days. But nonetheless, the first deck we present is a take on an old classic. If you're familiar with the Poppy Taric or the Fiora Taric decks of old, this is getting a new upgrade and a new look to it with the release of Lux Illuminated. If you're not familiar with the new version of Lux, she is a 1/2 for 3 mana. She has the Spirit ability, so she's essentially a 2/3. And then when she attacks, she has a support ability to where she gives a permanent spirit to the unit that she's supporting. So she's essentially 7 stats the first time that she attacks, and then she gives herself barrier to protect herself. And so that does tie in very nicely with the likes of Taric. Taric also caring about the support abilities happening, him wanting to see you target or support allies a bunch of times. If you're not familiar with the main combo with Taric, is coming out of the rotation. Golden Aegis is still sticking around within the standard format. You're able to cast Golden Aegis on Taric attack, and then Taric will copy the Golden Aegis onto his supported unit, give you a rally, and let you attack again. So it gives you the potential to attack twice on your opponent's attack token, 3 times on your attack token, and that gives you lots of scaling bonuses in the sense that as you attack with Lux multiple times, you're going to be getting multiple spirit bonuses. As you attack with a unit like Mountain Sojourners multiple times, you're going to be granting these support bonuses over and over and over again. Very, very powerful collection of abilities if your opponent does not stop you with any kind of interaction. And so, in terms of the units on board with this deck, we have 5 challengers. The challengers play fantastically with the likes of Lux and Taric, giving you a little bit of interactivity while the units can survive quite well. So you see our Fleet Feather Tracker and the Scholarly Pioneer. Very interested in seeing how the Scholarly Pioneer plays in the upcoming days with the release of the Sleep Mechanic. The Sleep Mechanic putting your units within a landmark for the course of a turn. That gives us an opportunity to blow up that landmark if we hit the Scholarly Pioneer's expedition ability. I can't remember what it's called anymore. It's been a few days since I've cast it. But nonetheless, having access to these challenger units with the ability to grow in combat, very, very strong. Otherwise, you see a couple of new cards here. You got Fancy Ezreal displaying the spirits across your multiple units. Ezreal into Lumino Sprite is quite powerful since you can put the spirit onto the sprite, and then the sprite gives its supported keywords to the next unit. So you can be attacking with a 3/3 Lumino Sprite into a 2/2 Ezreal, passing out a bunch of bonuses everywhere. Very strong. Also worth calling out, Mountain Goat is back in Standard. Fantastic play in this style of deck. It gives us an early game interactive unit. Very powerful in terms of just stat efficiency, getting a 5 stat unit for 2 mana, but more importantly here we're going to be generating those gems. Those gems can then be cast on Taric to help assist with his copy ability, or they can be cast on a challenger to perhaps let us attack up through the curve a little bit more. Very interesting addition coming back to the deck throughout the course of rotation. Now, one of the cards we don't typically see in the space of Poppy Taric style decks is Arbiter of the Peak. This is a card that I suspect is going to have a lot of impact in this style of deck in the upcoming days, since there are so many ways to both target and support now. With all of these additional ways to provide boosts to your units, gives you those targets that you're going to need to help level up the Arbiter. A key kind of example of that will be the new card in Light of Demacia, letting us get 1 target off the level 1 story, a secondary target off the level 2 story, and then providing a big boost ability at the end of the day. So we're getting multiple targets out of the same card. We're using that to level up our Taric, level up our Arbiter of the Peak, and then we have plenty of targets for boost with the amount of spirits that we're able to pass out. Last one to call out, another new card. Classically, Poppy Taric liked to play Concerted Strike. If you're trying to level up the target abilities, then cards like Smoldering Smirk work fantastically. Having this boost to allies, then they strike another enemy, gives us 3 targets in terms of leveling up Taric and cheapening up our Arbiter of the Peak. And so it's not particularly unreasonable to think that we couldn't cast a Smoldering Smirk on turn 5 and then very easily cast an Arbiter of the Peak on turn 6, given that the number of targets and supports that we've done. So very interesting deck, very powerful, quite interested in seeing how this plays out, if this is the best way that we can take advantage of Lux, if this is the best way we can take advantage of Golden Aegis and Taric, and get into those good combat moments right when the battles begin. Deck number 2 that we have to offer up, another Lux deck. This one is Lux Lillia. And as I was kind of overlooking the spirit mechanic, the thing that I really noticed over and over and over again is the units are exceptionally small. And so if we look at a card like Spritelings, it's technically a 0/0 unit with 2 tags of spirit. So it's functionally a 2/2, but technically a 0/0. Same thing applies for cards down here like Aberrant Mage Seeker. So a 2/3 for 5 mana, not that spectacular of a deal, but you're expecting that when he comes down on board, he's going to give 2 or 3 other units this spirit bonus. So if he gives the bonus to 3 units, that's technically an 11 stat unit that we're going to be getting. But the card that I'm very interested in using with these is the Altar of Unity. And now I will admit right up front, I'm not entirely certain how the Altar of Unity works with Spirit. The idea that we're using with the Altar here is that we'll be able to play a Spritelings. It costs 1 mana, so it will grow to a 1/1. And then it will get the 2 tags of Spirit attached to it, so it would be a 3/3 for 1 mana. Same kind of thing applies to all of these other units. So we have a unit like Mr. Root. He technically is a 1/2 because he has Spirit, but he's a 2 mana card. If we play this while Altar of Unity is on the board, he should grow to a 2/2 and then get the additional bonuses from Spirit. And so you might more classically be used to this idea with cards like Silverwing Vanguard. So we summon the Vanguard with the Altar of Unity on the board. It grows to a 4/4, and then the other bird comes on board, giving us another 4/4. So we spend 4 mana, get 2 4/4 challengers at the end of the day. But, I'm very interested in this with the likes of Spirit, very interested in this with cards like Sprite Mother, which just has a horrible stat line, but if it grows to a 4/4, it's going to be fantastically strong. And so very curious if this set of abilities is going to work out how we want, because it's also interesting with the addition of things like sleep. So typically with the sleep mechanic, we're looking to just get a little bit of additional value out of our units, right? So we have a Silverwing Vanguard on the board. We put it to sleep. It summons back the next turn. We get that additional Silverwing Vanguard. A little bit more powerfully would be with things like the Sprite Mother, to where we resummon the Sprite Mother, give that additional everywhere bonus to all of our Spritelings. But what should be kind of useful and cool with this is one of the huge negatives to the Altar of Unity is it doesn't affect your units that are already on board, and you just have to play it on turn 4 with nothing else to do that turn. And so ideally, what we're able to do with the sleep mechanic is say that we have played the Petal Pixie on turn 2, and then we play the Altar of Unity on turn 4. Later on in the game, on turn 5 or so, we should be able to sleep the Petal Pixie. It will come back, and then it will get the stat bonus from the Altar of Unity as well. And so it should be something that helps out in the mid game as we look to use the additional bonuses from the sleep abilities. Also worth noting with the Altar that Lillia is small and Lux is small. And so if this spirit bonus works as we think it does, Lux should come down as a 3/3, then grow to a 4/4 with Spirit. Same thing with Lillia. She should come on board as a 3/3. And then get that bonus of Spirit and go up to a 4/4. And so I'm very interested on how this plays out. There's a lot of opportunity for a ton of power with the Altar of Unity. It's always been kind of a fringe card, but if there's enough build around stuff around it, it has lots of potential to get exceptionally strong. So in terms of the remainder of the deck, one of the problems that you always run into with these super stat-heavy decks is you need a way to elusive, overwhelm, or rally. Otherwise, you can't close out the game, right? Let's say that we have 4 10/10 Spritelings on the board. We attack. The opponent just blocks and says, LOL, I take no damage today. They lost all of their units in the process, but they're going to have the time to recover on their future turns. And so we are looking to get some rallies out of both Tiana and Golden Aegis. Tiana giving us a little bit of double duty with sleep. And so We can potentially play Tiana, get the rally, attack, sleep Tiana. She'll come down the next turn, give us an additional rally, and let us attack again. Nice little potential value engine with these sleeps on the back end. So otherwise, some of the new cards within here, I'm very interested in how good Blooming Bud is. This strikes me as being one of the more powerful Ionia cards in the current set, given that it can kind of function as a stun on an opposing unit. So if your opponent's making a big attack, you can sort of stun the unit by putting it to sleep. Also gives us the potential to counterspell some of the opposing plays. And so if the opponent is trying to play a big boost onto one of their spirit units, we might be able to sleep it away from the game so that it doesn't get that positive effect. There's just a lot of good for me and good for you effects that can come out of this Blooming Bud. And then the same kind of thing applies with the Spirit Dance. I'm not entirely certain how this works in terms of granting the stacks to the other allies, but I'm thinking that this is going to be a reasonably powerful card. If it's able to just give another ally a permanent +2/+2, that tends to be good enough. So say we counterspell our opponent's hate spike and then put our spirit stacks onto another unit, not a terrible play there. But at the end of the day, again, trying to take advantage of the Altar of Unity. I hope that it works. If you play your Altar of Unity and then follow up with a spirit unit and it doesn't work how we thought, then blame Riot. It's not my fault, right? Moving on to deck number 3, we have our Vex offering, and I'm very kind of perplexed as to what we're supposed to be doing with Vex, right? Vex is an attack-based champion with his on-attack ability delivering gloom to the opposing unit, but he doesn't play in a particularly attacky style of faction, right? The Shadow Isles piece just doesn't have a lot of good attacky style units within it. And so if you're trying to do attacky style of things, it seems like you want to be within Bandle City. And then if you're in Bandle City, he kind of awkwardly fits within the curve. You're not able to take advantage of a lot of gloom. You're not able to take advantage of a lot of these fearsome abilities because that's just not what Bandle City does. And so I'm not quite certain to where Vex is supposed to be fitting into the world. And the card that actually interests me quite a bit isn't so much Vex as much Shadow. And so my thought and idea with Shadow is this is just like a different flavor of Tristana, right? It doesn't have to see us grant the glooms onto the opposing unit, so we can just say over the course of the game, by the time we get to turn 7, say we've gloomed our opponent 5 times, right? So then on that turn 7 idea, we play Shadow. He's going to come down as a 7/5 fearsome, which we can do some work with, right? We can make some things happen if we play a reasonably attack-heavy type Shadow, very much in the same way that we would look to use a Tristana. And so that brought me to the kind of idea and concept of going back to that Nox and Might style of Tristana deck. So we can look to get a very big attack bonus Tristana, we can try and get a very big attack bonus Shadow, or we can get a very big naturally attack-heavy Enraged Fire Spitter, make an attack in on the opponent, might that big unit, and then ideally be able to close out the game. And so to kind of tie all of this together, it is a Vex deck, but we're not playing tons of copies of Vex. He is here as just kind of a supporting role to Shadow, right? Again, I think that Shadow should be considered the actual champion of the mix, and then Vex is the supporting role. And in that mind, we kind of get to play 7 champions out here in our deck today. And so we do have a very small Gloom type package. We're playing the Glare within the spell space. Ally is a potential way to drop glooms if we want, and then the singular copy of Vex able to do it as well. One thing to note is we could hit copies of Glare off of the Conchologist to potentially ramp up that gloom count. But at the end of the day, the one to really call out to me is the Blighted Battle Axe. This card really weirded me out to actually see come forward. I didn't realize this existed until I started looking for the Gloom cards to use in conjunction with Vex. And to me, this is probably just one of the actual best cards in the game right now, and I'm super excited to see how this plays out. Getting 6 stats out of a 2-mana thing is a very good deal. Getting 4 stats out of a 2-mana equipment is a very good deal, and if we can use this kind of gloom ability as an additional way to level up our Shadow, that's just all money at the end of the day. And so We are out here with our additional ways to develop the super unit with the likes of the Blighted Battle Axe. We could, in the early game, just put it on Teemo. There's nothing wrong with attacking with a 4/4 elusive and then attacking with a 3/3 elusive and then using those gloom stacks to help level up our shadow. And then that will help us chip in some damage to get that big finale might in. Same thing kind of applies with the Protoporo. It felt, a little bit too magical Christmas landy to play a bunch of copies of Teemo and then a bunch of copies of Protoporo, but I'm not entirely convinced that this deck shouldn't just contain 3 Teemos and 3 Protoporos, 0 copies of Vex, and then 3 copies of Shadow, and then really just be all in on this Blighted Battle Axe plus Might style of combo. And so, quite interested to see how this plays out. There are still, quite a few value engines running around. This deck doesn't look like it has a ton of spells to do with just the Pytos, the Glare, the Might, and the Singular Shunpo, but you do have to remember that the Conchologist can generate a spell, the Bandle City Mayor can generate another unit, and then the Loping Telescope is able to generate some stuff as well. And so, while I hated this style of deck in the olden days, I felt like the might-based overwhelm on my giant unit style of decks were just too all in to really function. They were too easy to shut down. I feel like with all of this additional value that we get out of these generators, it really gets me in that kind of mindset that these are decks that I may not necessarily hate. Up next, if you are ultra sad that Lurk has been taken out of the standard format, I present to you what should hopefully clear up your day a little bit. Much in the same vein that with the Teemo Tristana deck, I was surprised to see the new equipment. I was interested in how we could best take advantage of the Arena's Greatest. And to me, this is a very interesting ability in that if you've been looking through the spoiler season and seeing all of the weird images and you're saying, why the fuck does this landmark show up 3 times with 3 different skills? That's just due to how the stories are going to work, and the story is technically leveling up to a different version of the same card. But the thing to really note with that is that these stories all produce skills. Everything that the story does is a skill-based ability, and so we should ideally be able to get these bonuses out of the landmark multiple times. And so my idea with Annie Jhin is that we're typically pretty happy to get some low-level activations out of these cards, right? We get 1 activation out of Imperial Demolitionist, 1 activation out of Solari Sunhawk, 1 activation out of the Stagehand. What if we get 3 activations out of a single card for 1 mana, while also doing a bunch of shit that is very on theme with what you want to do? And so if you want to just imagine that we're on the even attack tokens on turn 1, we play Annie. On turn 2, we play the Arena's Greatest, and we play a Crackshot Corsair, and then we'll say that we use the Arena's Greatest onto the Crackshot Corsair. So now we're just naturally attacking for 6 damage, right? We get 4 from the Corsair, 2 from Annie. We've done 3 skills on the turn, the Arena's Greatest, the Crackshot Corsair, and the Annie herself. And this just sounds like we're really turbocharging everything that this deck wants to do. And so I can very easily imagine scenarios as to where on our first attack, we Arena's Greatest. On our second attack, we Arena's Greatest. On our third attack, we do the can't block thing. That all sounds well and good. But I can also envision scenarios to where we just burn a skill on the opponent's turn to help make things happen a little bit faster, right? We can still activate Mana Soul Students if we don't have the attack token, and we can still use this to level up our Annies and level up our Jhins. It's another way to really tie in with Jhin and his ability to get stuns on the opposing units when we want, right? And so we could potentially set up some of these boards to where we set an opposing unit unable to block, and then we stun it with the Virtuoso, make it very challenging for our opponent to stop our final incoming onslaught. I think that this is going to be a real treat in terms of what Annie Jhin wants to see. Otherwise, in terms of the additions and removals to Annie Jhin with the new set, we will be trying Ally out here. It's a card that strikes me as very interesting. It's a reasonably statted unit in that if we go on the Spirit side, a 6-stat impact unit for 3 mana isn't that bad of a deal, especially assuming that it gets the additional skill for our Annie and Jhin, or it can also be used as a bit of interactivity, right? Jhin, notoriously bad at interacting with the opposing units. It tends to just stun them and hope for the best. Being able to potentially remove a Teemo or remove a small unit from the opposing board while activating a skill and getting an impact unit on board just ties into a lot of very powerful abilities. Last but not least, Arachnoid Sentry is back in Standard, an old standby in terms of what Jhin likes to have in his deck. That does allow us to play copies of the Stagehand, the Arachnoid Sentry, and the Solari Stunhawk for our stuns. There are other stuns out and about, but the Arachnoid Sentry is arguably the best one available out of all of these. I am looking very forward to hating this deck for the upcoming season, and so we hate the Might deck coming from Tristina Teemo. We hate Jhin. What more can we hate after that? And so the last one that we have to offer up here today is Jax Tristana. Now, Tristana Jax has had a bit of history in the space of Legends of Runeterra, the idea being that the Weapon Masters tend to be multi-faction. So we have Fereth, the Piltover Castaway, and the Combat Cook as multi-faction units. That's quite good at leveling up Tristana, but then we can also generate the Overwhelm equipment, use that Overwhelm equipment to have Tristana punch in for a big attack at the end game. That's something that our deck can do, but is not the main purpose of generating this deck. The main purpose here is the addition of the Wings Giving. And so if you are familiar with the usage of concurrent timelines with the Weapon Master units, the Weapon Masters are all shitty stat units, right? Because they come on board with the weapon attached to them. So if we look at a unit like Piltover Castaway, he does not have a lot of stats, right? We typically get 6 stats out of a 3-cost unit, but having the unit come on board with the weapon really made up for that loss of stats. But with concurrent timelines, you would transform it into a unit that has the same cost, and so you could ideally turn him into a different 3/3 unit, just some rando that has 6 stats, but the important thing being that 6-stat rando gets the equipment still attached to it. And so we're going to be looking to pull off a lot of those concurrent timeline shenanigans with the Wings Giving. It's a very similar effect to where you pick an ally and then you pick one of 3 followers that cost 1 more than that ally to transform it into. And so the key thing there is to where concurrent timelines would pick a unit of the same cost. So if we played this 3-cost Weapon Master, we would get a 3-cost unit in return. The Wings Giving does let us go up the curve a little bit, which is a very surprising thing for me to see. So level 1 of the Wings Giving goes up 1, level 2 of the Wings Giving goes up 1, and then the last level up of it goes up 2 additional. And so you get the big boost at the end of the day. And so within this deck, we just have a ton of value-oriented units that do help tie into that. We've mentioned the Fereth, the Castaway, and the Combat Cook as the Weapon Master standbys, giving us additional ways to boost with the Wings Giving. Risu, the Silent Storm, is kind of a classical take on one of the cards that you can get, since you get the very understated Risu, but you get the high-impact Storm Cloud that comes out of it, and then you'll just look to convert Risu into a 6-drop. The thing I'm not playing that is available would be the card Banana Blaster. Banana Blaster is a bit of a different story as to where it functioned much better with the timelines. Not too interested in playing the 2/2 and upgrading it later. Otherwise, the interesting things in here, we do still get that big value engine that we mentioned with the usage of the Teemo Tristana deck. The Conchologist is here generating cards, the Bandle City Mayor is here generating cards, and then the Loping Telescope can generate cards as well. And so just an absolute ton of units that are capable of coming down, generating other things. And I love that ability in the sense that if a certain piece of our deck doesn't come together, we should still be able to value through our opponents. And so that's it. 5 decks to try. We've got Lux Taric. We've got the Altar of Unity Sprites deck. We've got the Teemo Tristana Vex Might deck. We've got Jhin with the Landmark deck. And we have Jax Tristana. And so hopefully we'll get to do battle with these in the upcoming days. If there's anything that you feel like I missed, be sure to let me know, whether or not that's some cards within the deck or another deck entirely and completely. And if you are familiar with that interaction with what the Altar of Unity is meant to do, be sure to let us know so you can help out the other folks out there that may may come up with this deck that doesn't actually work. And so, good stuff with that. I had fun with that. I hope you did too, because that is going to do it for us today. So, if everyone enjoyed the video, hope you maybe learned a thing or two along the way. You had a good time watching. This is Bust, and we thank you for being here.